Welcome to Extramilers, where we bring you insights from those who have gone the extra mile. Authors, thought leaders, and experts whose ideas can transform your personal and professional life. Truly special in honor of International Women's Day. We're diving into lessons, stories, and hard learned wisdom of some of the most powerful women in leadership. Let's start with a question. Why do we still need to talk about women in leadership? Women have made incredible strides in business, politics, and technology. But when you look at the numbers, they still tell a different story. Only 10% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women. This number does not improve as we check the top 3,000 companies. As of 2024, women hold 9% of CEO positions in Russell 3000 companies, an increase from 6.2% in 2021. This marks 66% rise over 3 years, indicating progress in women's leadership within public companies. What about the startup world? What's happening there? In the UK, in the first half of 2024, all female founded businesses received just 1.8% of the total value of equity investment in the UK, amounting to approximately £145 million. This stark disparity highlights the challenges female entrepreneurs face in securing venture capital funding. Whether they work in Paris, London, or in Silicon Valley, almost all women entrepreneurs express the same worry that their gender stands in the way of their success. And a Harvard study backs up those fears. It points out that investors formulate questions differently when speaking to men versus women entrepreneurs. Men are typically asked promotion-oriented questions. And the questions are more about their potential gains and success. For example, how do you plan to grow the market share? This is a typical example which shows the inherent assumption that the entrepreneur will succeed. At workplaces, the employees who are women, they ask for raises at far lower rates than men. And despite equal qualifications, they are less likely to be promoted into leadership roles. Now, here is what's fascinating. Women have been writing about these challenges for decades, and today we're diving into their work, from Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In to Brené Brown's Dare to Lead, from Kim Scott's Radical Candor to Shellye Archambeau's Unapologetically Ambitious, and many more. This isn't just a history lesson. This is about giving you tools, concrete strategies you can use today, whether you're an entrepreneur, a manager, or someone aspiring to leadership. This episode is for you. We'll start with resilience, getting up after every fall. Why this? Because if there's one universal truth about leadership, it's this: you will fail. And when you do, the most important thing is how you respond. Brené Brown, in Rising Strong, tells the story of a senior executive who had just made the biggest mistake of her career. She had lost a major client, and she knew it was her fault. She was ready to quit, thinking, they're never going to trust me again. But her boss pulled her aside and said something that changed her life. This isn't the end of your career. This is the moment that will define it. What did she mean? Well, failure isn't the opposite of success. It's part of it. The most successful women in business aren't the ones who never fail. They are the ones who fail and keep going. Arianna Huffington is another example. In Thrive, she shares how she was working excessively long hours while building the Huffington Post, neglecting sleep and self-care. One day, due to sheer exhaustion, she collapsed in her office, hit her desk on the way down, and woke up in a pool of blood with a broken cheekbone. This experience served as a wake-up call, prompting her to rethink her definition of success. She realized that well-being, wisdom, and purpose are just as important as money and power. Let me ask you this. When is the last time you worked yourself to the point of exhaustion? What did you learn from it? Let's jump into another topic, confidence. Confidence is another huge barrier for women in leadership. And here's what's wild. Confidence is actually more predictive of success than competence. In Lean In, Sheryl Sandberg shares this shocking statistic. Men apply for jobs when they meet only 60% of the qualifications. Women, they wait until they meet 100%. Think about that. Women hold themselves back before anyone else even has a chance to. Kathy Kay and Claire Shipman and the Confidence Code studied this for years. They found that men consistently overestimate their abilities, while women consistently underestimate theirs, even when their skills are equal. One of my favorite examples comes from their research. They interviewed an executive woman who admitted that every time she walked into a boardroom, she felt like a fraud. Like one day, people would figure out she wasn't really supposed to be there. Then they interviewed male CEOs, and guess what? Not one of them admitted to feeling that same way. Even the ones who knew they weren't the most qualified in the room still assumed they belonged in the room. So, how do we fix this? Action. Confidence isn't something you're born with, it's something you build. The more you take risk, the more confident you become. So here's the challenge. This week, do one thing that scares you. Now, let's talk about communication. Because being a great leader isn't just about having good ideas. It's about making sure people hear them. Kim Scott, in Radical Candor, has one of my favorite pieces of advice on this. She says that women in leadership need to be clear and direct, but still show they care. She tells a story about when she worked at Google. After a presentation, her boss, Sheryl Sandberg, put her aside and said, "You did great, but you say too much. Let's get you a speech coach." At first, Kim was offended, but then she realized that was the best gift she could have received. Women are often conditioned to be too nice, to sugarcoat everything. But the best leaders, they speak with radical candor. They challenge people directly, but they do it because they care. Next topic is owning ambition. How to get what you want. Let's talk about ambition, because too many women are afraid to own theirs. Shellye Archambeau, one of the first Black female CEOs in Silicon Valley, wrote Unapologetically Ambitious to tell women success doesn't happen by accident, it happens by design. She talks about how she strategized every career move, not just taking opportunities as they came, but actively creating them. Here is her best advice. If you want something, don't just hope it happens. Plan for it. Work towards it. And most importantly, ask for it. Finally, let's talk about power, because leadership isn't just about climbing the ranks. It's about influence, impact, and shaping the world around you. But how to define power? What is power really? Traditionally, power has been about control. Who gets to make decisions? Who has the authority over others? But there's another way to look at it. True power isn't about dominance. It's about impact, influence, the ability to create change. There are different types of power. In leadership, we are mostly used to seeing one type of power, and that's the positional power. which is the authority that comes with a title. Other types, expert power, the influence that comes from knowledge and skills. Another type, relational power, the strength of networks and connections. Also, moral power, the ability to inspire, drive change through values. Have you thought about how men and women express power differently? For decades, we've been shown one dominant image of power, the kind that is direct, assertive, and frankly aggressive. And this is the kind of power most often associated with men. Research shows that men in general are more likely to use positional and authoritative power. Power that comes from their title or formal authority. They tend to demonstrate power through assertion, competition, and control. They interrupt more in meetings, take up more space in discussions, and negotiate their salaries more aggressively. Women, on the other hand, often lean into relational, moral, or collaborative power, using influence, persuasion, and connection to lead. Studies show that women are more likely to build consensus, listen actively, and empower others rather than command or dictate. Neither approach is inherently better, but here is where the problem comes in. The business world has historically rewarded the male model of power, loud, assertive, and dominant. Women who use relational and collaborative power are often perceived as too soft, while those who take more direct approach risk being labeled as too aggressive. This double standard forces many women to walk a tightrope, constantly balancing between being likable and being taken seriously. Redefining power in leadership is our job. And traditionally, power has been associated with dominance. Quality is often encouraged in men, but discouraged in women. But what if power looked differently? What if power was about collaboration, vision, and the courage to challenge the status quo? Take Jacinda Ardern, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, as an example. She led not with force, but with empathy and connection. During the COVID-19 crisis, she communicated clearly, listened to people, and built trust. She didn't need to dominate the room to be an effective leader. She used a different kind of power, and that's leadership. For women in leadership, the key isn't just getting power, it's redefining it. That means speaking up even when it's uncomfortable. Building networks that amplify your voice, owning your expertise and knowing your worth. Using power to uplift others, not just advance yourself. So, what did we learn today? We learned that failure isn't final. Confidence is built and not inherited. Communication is key. Ambition isn't selfish, it's necessary. And let's redefine power together. I want to hear from you. What's your biggest leadership challenge? Send me a message on Instagram or comment on YouTube. If this episode resonated with you, share it. Let's amplify these conversations. Until next time, keep pushing, keep speaking up, and keep owning your space.